Hi, my name is Jonathan Leshnoff, and I welcome you to this Naxos Roundtable discussion about the new CD that Naxos has just put out of my music performed by the amazing Oklahoma City Philharmonic with Alexander Mickelthwate as conductor, who joins me right here, and Noah Bendix-Balgley, who will be joining us momentarily as a soloist for the Violin Concerto. Maestro Alexander, it's been quite a wonderful experience working with you in this project.
Oh yeah, it's like 3 years in the making, huh?
It is.
Started way before Copeland, before COVID. A month before the world shut down. That's when we started our project.
Yes. And how many years have you been with the Philharmonic?
So I'm Alexander Mickelthwate, music director of the Oklahoma City Philharmonic. My contract started 2018, and since then I live in Oklahoma and I'm conducting the orchestra here. Yes.
So it's one of your first projects right out the gate.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. Okay, great. So we're going to be talking about all three pieces on this CD. The Elegy, the Violin Concerto, and finally Of Thee I Sing. So we'll start with the Elegy, which is a short piece that memorializes music written under oppression. So we'll take the first question from that we'll discuss today.
Was commissioned by the Bellingham Symphony Orchestra, Yaniv Attar, music director, and the Tennessee Holocaust Commission. Maestro Yaniv commissioned the work for a series that he does in Bellingham called Harmony from Discord, where he spotlights music that was created from people under oppression. In the program that he commissioned my Elegy for, it was dedicated to music composed during the Holocaust, a piece that would come from the depths of pain and despair and express hope and survival through that.
So, as we see here, two of the works on the album memorialize tragic historical events. How does this affect my approach to composition and performance? Well, I could certainly speak to the composition aspect of it, and Alexander to the performance. Certainly, when composing a piece specifically about a certain topic or idea, the creativity has to be funneled and has to go through a match process, almost like a tube, where the music that's going to come out is going to evoke feelings that I want to draw upon to express about the topic. So I felt in this commission, I wanted a piece that would be nostalgic, that would be have a lot of depth, and also would resemble a standalone work like Barber's Adagio for strings, like Mahler's Adagietto from his Fifth Symphony, something that is smaller in orchestration. In this case, I just use strings and harp and horns, and gets to the point quickly and substantively and leaves a lasting impression.
Well, I guess it's my turn. In this case, it's from the performance standpoint, there are two aspects to it. It's to put it into the context, in the right concert environment, and then also to put it in the right context with other works on the program. And in this case, I programmed it for the Omashoa event last year, May 2022, where it was part of a 1-hour event, and we performed Erwin Schulhoff's Symphony No. 6. Erwin Schulhoff was a Jewish composer who died in the concentration camp. And in this case, Jonathan's absolutely magnificent, heart-wrenching elegy fit in so beautiful to round up that whole concert. Now, the elegy then specifically from the performance standpoint, yes, there are some angles that remind me of Gustav Mahler, like high romantic music. There's a certain fluidity, very tragic, very emotional, and actually in this case, very pure, like a purity in the string sound, which makes it actually not easy to perform just from that practical standpoint, to create that absolute crystal clear sound world. And but then looking back now, the performance in that context of Yom HaShoah, I was, from my perspective, really powerful. The works that were performed worked really well together. Orchestra played beautifully. So I love that work, and yeah, I feel it stands right up there with Barbara's Adagio or with the Adagietto. It's really right up there. The same impact, real depth, really strong and transcending all the horrors. So I'm really excited to have that on our recording.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And thank you for doing a great performance of it, Alexander. I think we're ready for the next question. Is Oklahoma City Philharmonic's first full-length album recording since its formation in 1988. What led to Elegy being included on the album?
Well, from my perspective, it is, as you can tell, it's like the main work is Of Thee I Sing, that resulted out of the horrors of that Oklahoma City bombing. So it's really music that transcends something that happened on this planet, and that was like something horrible. And then music is this language of healing very often, and specifically in those two works. And in this case now, it rounds out this bigger vision of the recording, from darkness to light. And again, I think it's really actually marvelous how they work together, and how it seemed all the stars were aligned, and created this beautiful little gem of a recording.
Excellent. I think we can go to the next question now. Elegy's themes range from dark and somber to uplifting and hopeful. Given the work's inspiration, how do you balance the two opposing moods and incorporate them into one piece? This is something that I could speak to. As Alexander just mentioned, the theme of the CD is from darkness to light, from the horrors of the experience in the Oklahoma City bombing and the other tragedies of humanity, and expressing them in a way which leads one to hope rather than to despair. And the way that this is done, I did this technically in Elegy, is actually within the forms and the themes. The form of the piece is what we call ternary form, A, B, A. There's a first idea A, and then a second unrelated idea B, and then the A returns at the end of the piece. Each of these letters is around 3 minutes long. 3 times 3 is 9, so it's around a 9-minute piece. The first A, the first section of the piece, is quite somber, and that is meant to reflect the direness of the situation. But the B section, the contrasting section in the middle, has more lilt and move and line and motion to it. And even in the harmony clears up a bit. The chords become more hopeful, more bright, more translucent. The B section then climaxes, and the initial section returns at the end, but it is transfused with ideas that were played in the middle in the B section. So the way that I worked with these contrasting themes of the darkness and the light was literally to combine them, to make one section reflect the dark, one section reflect the light, and the final section, that return of the A, to have them combine, not to deny the past, but to take the what could be learned from it and the hopefulness, and to work with that.
Well, I mean, from my side, you can tell that those two colors in a way, this from darkness to light, and how you used it like tools a little bit, as a painter, and create through those two sections this interaction between the darkness and the light. And I think it's very powerful.
Thank you. I thought you did a great job conducting it, because I remember listening and watching and being involved in the recording sessions, and just how your motions elicited the movement from the orchestra in a very visceral, real way. So I thought that was really wonderful, Alexander.
Yeah, thank you.
We'll now go to the second piece in the CD, and Alexander and I are really honored and happy to have just one of the world's great violinists who have joined us for this recording. Noah Bendix-Balgley is the first concertmaster of the Berlin Symphony, quite an accomplishment of a violinist at such a young age. And
Philharmonic. Yeah.
Berlin
Philharmonic. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Yes, Berlin Philharmonic. I stand corrected. And he is here to join us to give us his perspective on recording this violin concerto with us. So we welcome Noah.
I'm Noah Bendix-Balgley, violinist and concertmaster of the Berlin Philharmonic, and I'm thrilled to be in Oklahoma City this week to perform the Jonathan Leshnoff Violin Concerto No. 2 with the Oklahoma City Philharmonic. It's a wonderful, exciting piece with soaring melodies, and I'll give you a little taste of it right now.
Nice.
Hello.
Hi, Jonathan. Hi, Alexander. Great to see you.
Hi, Noah. Nice to welcome you from half the world away.
Yeah. Hi from Berlin.
Hi from Berlin. Nice. Say hi to everybody in Germany.
Yeah.
Well, I guess we could jump right into the first question here, which is: many contemporary composers are known for breaking the standard musical forms, but Violin Concerto No. 2 follows the traditional symphony concerto model. What are the benefits of continuing to compose and perform works written using traditional compositional methods? Well, I think I could take this one on, which is it has to do with my philosophy in composing. I believe that the true test of time of works from our past stands. I'm of the belief if all of the repertoire was in a library, and someone was asked to say, you're going to go to an island and never come back, what 3 pieces would you take? What would they be? Well, I know the ones that I would take, and I'm of the belief that the repertoire that has existed for a long time and people still respond to today has value and has wisdom and reasons why it stays. And as such, I value taking traditional models of the symphony, of the string quartet, of the concerto, and using those as models, but pouring new ideas, new essences, new harmonies, new types of counterpoint into forms that have largely stood the test and trial of time. And so I see my passion and focus as a composer is to breathe new life into these forms, which I love doing. Of course, there are many other forms of musics of other cultures and peoples which are coming to our attention, which are valid and wonderful and worthy. But I'm a fan of the past, and I see value and importance in working with those models as well. So that's why I chose this symphony concerto form to express this violin concerto. Okay, enough about my writing. I know that we have some questions for our guests here, so why don't we say the next question? Has the experience of recording the works of a living composer different from that of performing well-known pieces by composers of the past?
Well, I mean, this ties in a bit with Jonathan, with what you were saying about your philosophy of composition. in this piece, which I really enjoyed learning and performing and recording, it's really a wonderful work. I sense that as a performer was Jonathan, your connection to the tradition, symphonic and concerto tradition that came before, and sometimes in very specific ways. I mean, we talked about this beforehand about sections that were perhaps inspired by textures and like the Sibelius Violin Concerto or traditional folk kind of dance music and such. And for me as an interpreter, as a performer, that's very important too. It gives me a reference of how to approach a work that I've never heard or played before. And that's an exciting thing to do. I think, a lot of what I spend my time doing, both in my job as a concertmaster in Berlin and also my solo work is as interpreter of works that have been around for 100, 200, 300 years, that have been interpreted countless times before. And I value that work a lot, of trying to find something even new in interpretation, and still even more details in let's say a Brahms piece or a Mozart piece. But there's something really refreshing and exciting about doing something that hasn't been done before, and it's really the first chance to present it to the world is an exciting new piece of music. And that was really, really, really fun. And you have the advantage, you can actually talk to the composer, which is something, I often wish I could, call up Beethoven and say, what the heck were you thinking here when you wrote that? In this case, I can, write an email to Jonathan or call him up, and we can talk about a section and trade ideas. And it's a really exciting process that happens now in the real world. And I think that's so important that we keep this moving forward and keep, both from the composition side, which Jonathan does, but also from our side, interpreting it, keep bringing new works to light and presenting them both in concert and in this case, and a new recording. So for me, that was really exciting. And also, just to mention Jonathan's background with the violin meant that this, you really love the instrument and what it can do. And I felt that in this piece, that you really explored, both from a sort of virtuosic sense, what the violin can do, but also especially the singing lyricism, which comes through in much of this piece. And that's really important for me too, is this bringing the best qualities of the instrument to the forefront. And I feel like you did this with this piece.
Thank you very much. Indeed, Noah and I had those conversations that he referred to, where Noah called me up and said, well, what are you intending for this? How should I interpret this? Or what were you thinking of? And I remember several passages Noah said, I'd like to try it this way. I said, that's a really good idea. And so, which I hadn't thought of. So there's some passages here which really bear Noah's own original interpretive footprint, and I really love the way it came out.
Thanks. And I think that's one of the fun things about it being a new work. Of course, then we have this snapshot in time, this recording that we present from these concerts and sessions of what we talked about and what I was feeling and thinking about the piece. And of course, hopefully many other people will go on to play this piece as well, and will have their own insights to bring to it, and that will add to the experience of it over the years now that it's out there.
Alexander, some thoughts you have to share about the topic?
Yeah, I mean, sure, lots. I mean, it's more than also for in the context of the I Sing. We can go more into that then. It's always interesting for me to perform a work by a living composer, especially if it's completely new, compared to then a Beethoven or something that has been written. And I guess the big question is, and maybe also to Noah, the balance between bringing in your own artistic and the performer's perspective versus being true to the score. And here it's, I mean, with let's say Mozart or Beethoven, Tchaikovsky, one has a little bit more flexibility, it seems. And with contemporary works, well, you're right there, Jonathan, and one wants to be as close to the score as possible, but one is still a performer. And to keep that balance is kind of was an interesting thing for me.
Yeah.
So that's great. Okay. We'll move on to the third question for this section. Like the other two works on this album, this is the world premiere recording of Violin Concerto No. 2. What are the challenges or opportunities you encountered recording these works for the very first time?
Oh, well, I mean, I think I can tell you a little bit about, my process learning new pieces, which I do have to do a lot of because I go through a ton of repertoire when I'm playing with the Berlin Philharmonic. Every week is a completely new program. And a lot of the stuff is things I've played, but often they're new things. Usually there's a new piece I have never played, and I think, okay, well, I get the music, I get my part, I get the score, and then I go on to YouTube or Spotify or Apple Music, and I look up some recordings and I listen through it and figure, okay, what's this about? Okay, where's my part in it? And that's not so much an option when it's a completely new piece because there's not yet that recording. I did remember getting from Jonathan a recording of the premiere with the Dallas Symphony, which was very helpful. But there's something also, liberating about getting, so to say, the first shot at it. I really, you're unencumbered from performance traditions because there are no performance traditions with this piece, and so I can really just start with what you wrote, Jonathan, and working through it myself in the practice room. And then when we get to rehearsal, I meet with Alexander. We talk about how we want to approach different sections, how to make things work. And then we talk directly with you, Jonathan. And that's a really exciting and liberating process, I think. So in some ways, there's part of it that's scary because there's nothing to refer to. But the other part of it is incredibly exciting because, there's a responsibility too with it to really bring this from the performance side, put everything into it to make it the best possible presentation of a new work.
Alexander.
Yeah, I mean, for my side, it's again similar. I guess it's with the Violin Concerto, I am a componist, of course, and so I'm following a little bit more, I guess, both of your leads, and have even less freedom than in of the I Sing, and with you, composer, and then of course Noah being the interpreter. So being the componist, making sure that you are okay, of course, Jonathan, but then how does Noah articulate it? How are you going about it? So he has to do the first set of decisions, although it's new, and then hands it over to me, and then I can hand this to the orchestra and create a little bit more synergy there.
I thought it was a wonderful collaboration between all of us. I felt that as a composer, there was a lot of sensitivity and concern, both from Alexander and Noah, about what I intended, and I certainly hope to give freedom of interpretation back. So the concerto really came out better than I had originally conceived it, which just shows like the dynamic process of music. That's something which could literally be written down, and I attest that I wrote it down, could come out with different ideas the more creative minds and artistic talent which is put into it. So I thought it was a wonderful collaboration. And
what actually was, I thought in the slow movement, it was more this combination of what you had written, but then creating form and shape through the performance and through your tempi choices, then Noah, because I remember it was like I think we deviated a little bit from the metronome marking and to create a bigger arc, and it was very powerful. I feel, it is very powerful.
Yeah,
but it was this coming together between what you had written, but then being in the moment on the stage, emotional, and creating a big sweep, and this nice this coming together of those two parts of creating something, the written and then the performer's side.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in the third movement, which is spunky and short, I love your tone, Noah. How you just your bowing and your tone just got a certain like life and energy into it, which Alexander and the orchestra picked up on, and it gave the movement just a lot of energy that I hadn't anticipated, and it was really fun to work with that.
Well, I mean, I remember connecting on that and asking you, you know, what's the inspiration behind this music? It sounds very folky and klezmery to me. And you said, oh, well, that's sort of what I was thinking. And so for me, you know, I love playing klezmer music, and that's a really important part of my musical life. And that immediately gave me point of reference of how to kind of approach it, and you know, how to shape certain rhythms and articulations to bring out that dance element that you wrote in the piece so nicely, and really accentuate that. And also, it's, you know, as a contrast to the lyricism and the emotionality of the second movement, which is really just the heart of the work, to have that then as a contrast, I thought works very well. It's, you know, I think maybe nice to mention too. I mean, we talked about it being a traditional concerto model. It is, except for the fact that actually you wrote it in 4 movements, and most concertos would be 3 movements. And I love this idea of having this little, you know, a scherzo, a third movement in between the hefty slow movement and the exciting last movement. I think it works very well.
Thank you. Yeah, in fact, that was the logic. As that's why it's called a symphony concerto, because, as you said, Noah, they usually concertos in 3 movements. This is in 4 because this hefty second movement that Alexander and Noah are discussing, I couldn't go into the jubilant 4th movement just right away.
Yeah,
Maybe
which makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, Mahler would do that. He's very big on juxtapositions and instant contrast, but I couldn't do that. So I had to insert this scherzo, which is Italian for joke. It's again, it's a revered form that's been around for centuries, but just a 2-minute thing that picked up on Noah's brilliance for klezmer performance and playing and composition. Noah's written a violin concerto. Noah was in Baltimore recently, where we met when the Baltimore Symphony performed his Fiddle Fantasy that he composed for a violin and orchestra. But picking up on all that to make this short, brief breather before we jumped into the final movement. This is a 4-movement work. Well, we know that you have a concert to preside over, Noah.
Yeah, I'm off to play some works by composers who I can't call on the phone, unfortunately, some Mozart and Schumann.
Nice.
But it's, you know, it's been an absolute pleasure seeing you and talking to you again, and reminiscing about our collaboration about a year ago. And I'm so glad that this CD is really out there now. Been turning it on now in the car when I'm driving around on the streaming services, and it's wonderful music, and it was really an honor and a pleasure to be a part of this with both of you.
Well, thank you. You did a brilliant job. And
yeah, thank you, Noah. So excited. I mean, beautiful playing. Really excited. Thank you.
Fantastic. All right. Well, have fun.
Thank you. Take care.
Okay.
Bye.
Great. Okay. Well, we will now discuss the final work of the CD, which was really the motivation. It was the first piece that started my collaboration with Alexander and the Oklahoma City Philharmonic of the I Sing. I believe there'll be a brief video to introduce this work to everyone.
One of the first things I did with the leadership team here to see, first of all, in Oklahoma City, what is coming up, any commemorations, celebrations, and how can we connect more than just here on the concert hall stage. And one of the big ones was really the 25th anniversary coming up of the Oklahoma City bombing.
This commission was very different in that I was writing about something that happened to the people and the community where it happened. It weighed very much heavily on my heart that the music that I'd be writing would be premiered to some people in the audience who had experienced that day. It's been a great honor to work with Maestro Alexander and the Oklahoma City Philharmonic and working with Naxos is always a pleasure to present this fine album on their renowned label.
Yes, indeed. It was a very meaningful project, which was that you asked me to write a piece using choir and orchestra in honor and memorialization of the 25th anniversary of the bombings. And it was a very weighty piece to write. It was not an easy piece to write. It took a lot of energy and mental focus to write this because there's so much at stake here. Why don't we jump right into the first question? This work was commissioned by Alexander on behalf of the Oklahoma City Philharmonic. Alexander, what led you to reach out to me? And then what were the reasons that I took this on as a project?
Yeah, I mean, it's this big thing. One has an idea and then actually gets funding, which is, well, the practical part. And I got the funding and had the idea. And then the question is, who do you commission? And as you all know, there are many, 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 many composers out there. And here in this specific case, I listened to so many living composers to figure out who would be the right person for this particular commission. And I had some actually first names for a while that I even pursued, but never felt settled because of the writing, because of the topic, and how does one emotionally connect with the idea, with the program in a way, and then put this into, does one have actually experience with that, to put something heavy into music. And then suddenly I was pointed towards Jonathan's Symphony of the Violins of Hope, this amazing work that was commissioned by the Nashville Symphony Orchestra in connection with that body of instruments, the violins of hope that were discovered on attics of Holocaust survivors. Instruments that were performed by Jewish musicians during the Holocaust and may have helped them survive. So a really serious, very tragic and but also meaningful project to connect those instruments. And that second, the slow movement of that work was so beautiful and so heart-wrenchingly sad, but then transcending that moment and creating, I don't know, something that goes so deep, went so deep to my personal soul. That was Jonathan's writing of that particular work. And then I thought, that's the man. So it took a while, but I feel it totally worked. I mean, yeah, it was worth the search and to find the right person. And I'm very grateful for what you did, Jonathan.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your kind words and your wonderful interpretation of this piece. Indeed, when Alexander approached me, I had conflicting feelings. On the one hand, here was a fantastic conductor asking me to write a work with orchestra and choir, and that is, that's a great opportunity for a composer. It doesn't get bigger and better than that. But I realized at the same time the weight, the depth, and the responsibility of this commission. And I wondered if I could do it, because as I mentioned in that video, I would be an outsider, a non-resident of Oklahoma City, writing about an event with a capital E that had touched and so disturbingly and difficultly touched people's lives. Was I the right one to do it? Should I do it? Ultimately, I had faith that if Alexander asked me, that I could step up to the plate. And so I took the commission. And I remember that in writing this piece, it took a lot of mental preparation. Many times my pieces start in my mind and I have to work them out in my head before I put something to paper. But I had an extra process of mental preparation, of really thinking about the situation, thinking about what it would have been like to be there. Of course, I was around when these incidents happened in 1995, but to imagine what it would be like to live in Oklahoma City was a whole extra preparation in writing this piece. And hopefully I portrayed and did a sensitive job, that the actual residents of Oklahoma City would find it acceptable. I think we could go to the second question now. Of the I Sing ends with a rousing finale featuring the Canterbury Voices, a choir. What inspired the decision to include a chorus section, and how do you view its impact on the piece? Alexander, would you like to talk about how the chorus got involved in the programming?
Sure.
And I could talk about from an inspirational point.
Yeah, sure. I mean, so from my perspective, I mean, I had sent when I invited Jonathan to write the work, I had sent him my outline, how I like to, like a big architectural plan in a way of how I envision it. And you still have that email. I still have the email, but I forgot a little bit how I wrote it. But it was to start in the drama, to start with that moment of horror, and then transcend and end peacefully. And I think we have it open for possibly using a chorus, or you asked, well, could there be a chorus? And I said, yes, there could be a chorus. But to be honest, then you have to talk about the rest of the story. I just gave the big outline, and it happened. You made it happen. You created that exactly how I envisioned it. That it's that at the end there's a sense of healing and unity, where people feel at least some sort of resolve to a certain extent, whatever one can do in music. But you have to tell how you came to the song.
Absolutely. The first interaction that Alex I had, we've become close friends since then, but the first email was just like a random email that you got my email address, and what Alex is referring to, his description, I certainly have. I have it right here. And not only do I have it right here, it's in the program notes, it's in the liner notes, because in this initial encounter we had, it was almost that Alexander was prophetic. What he wrote the idea of the piece, and to me it was like, that's it. And this became the idea of the piece, and its essence has infused the album itself. I'd like to read to everyone what a direct quote from what Alex wrote to me in that first email I ever had from him. The idea of the I Sing would be a 20 to 25 minute piece for orchestra and chorus that transcends the atrocity and focuses on all the good that came out of it in the last 25 years. A city growing together, but also transcending death, to the point where in this bizarre world, music actually unifies and makes the listener step out of the crazy into a spiritual sphere, where the spiritual becomes reality and the other just a dream. Truly poetic words, and very inspiring words to me. And every instrument that I've worked with has an essence, has its own soul that I try to tap into in my concertos. The human voice has a remarkably elevated soul. The power, of course, but also the ability just to connect and make this visceral, understood connection. And particularly when the voice could be soft. We're all familiar with people belting things out and singing things loud, which could be quite arresting and magnificent. But having someone sing soft, and especially a group of people sing soft, could be quite mystifying. And when I reread Alexander's email, I was thinking about the form of the piece, and I eventually decided to use the tune My Country 'Tis of Thee, which is a discussion in of itself. But I envisioned My Country 'Tis of Thee ending the piece quietly. The piece is kind of funneling down into a translucent harmony where the choir almost whispers and sings the refrain of the melody of this piece. And I thought that would be just a very appropriate way to end this piece, just as Alexander mentioned, where the spiritual becomes reality and the other just a dream. And so for me, the orchestrational texture and timbre of the choir fading out with the strings hovering above that was able to put those words to music.
But you also, I think, after there are two orchestra parts first, and then it stops, and then the choir comes in a cappella, I think. Also very soft, right?
Yes, yes.
So because what you said is true. I mean, one has the sense of a powerful, loud choir, like lots of voices, but the feel of lots of voices singing together, completely quiet. That's even more powerful. And you do this a couple of times, and I mean, wow.
Thank you very much. Yes, the form of this piece, it's around a 23-minute piece. There's like 15 minutes of just like orchestral angst and, sharp articulations and whatnot. And then it comes to a point where the choir could start the last section. The choir's from minute 15 to 23. The choir could start softly, which is what Alexander's referring to. Then the choir and the orchestra grow to a huge, loud belting section, and then comes back down to the nothingness that I was describing, which was inspired from that email. So yes, that very soft, hushed sound of the choir does occur twice in this piece. And that was the inspiration for working with the choir.
And I guess also from the text, I don't have it memorized, but there were a couple of lines, right, that indicate like of love or of healing, of my country 'tis of thee. That is just very, in a way, unifying. In our divisive world, there's no division in this ending. It's just really one, and you use that in a great way. So
yes, thank you. I was trying to purposely set the text set in my country 'tis of the sweet land of liberty. Sweet, I wanted to set sweet, and liberty, the way that I wanted to set liberty was something in an ethereal piece. Of thee I sing, and land where my fathers died, which is a direct reference to the tragedy that happened in Oklahoma City. So I felt that setting the text in this hushed way would be an appropriate way to do it. There are other stanzas of the poem, I guess, of the verse, which have some more exciting language that I coordinated with more motion in the orchestra. But certainly for the first stanza, that was my logic. Okay, I think we could go to the final question of our live interview here. Of Thee I Sing marks the 25th anniversary of the Oklahoma City bombing, which remains the worst act of homegrown terrorism in U.S. history. How do you view music's role in responding to current events and social issues?
Well, I mean, this is a big one, of course. In this case, after the bombing, they built a actual memorial, a physical memorial here in Oklahoma, with a building that was partly destroyed, being now the actual museum, and then the grounds where the destroyed building stood, Abraham Murray, I think, building, is now this, memorial of this very serene a pool, those two gates.
Which is on the cover of the CD.
Grounds, which is on the CD. And it has a very peaceful and serene, very peaceful and serene feel. Very beautifully done. And in this case now, I've had that strong sense to create a musical memorial, something similar, but through sound. And whereas you stroll physically through the landscape of that physical memorial, in this case, you sit, and then, of course, the music is passing you by and creating an architecture in your hearing and in your feelings, and then leads you, without you doing too much, it leads you then emotionally to different places, right? And comes to that point of resolve to a certain extent at the end. And I think that's really unique. No other art form can do that than specifically music. So in my opinion, it is well, something that will always continue, but that one uses music to connect with the now and with events of our time, the same way that, well, Beethoven connected the Eroica to originally, to Napoleon, then scratched it out, became a heroic piece. I mean, there's so many of those works that are born in its time, in its tragic times or peaceful times, personal histories of composers. That's very often a kernel of like real history. And to have our art form not just a art form of people that had lived in the past, that's a living art form. That means that we connected to living things. And that's what we're doing. So it is extremely important, extremely powerful to, in general, to create those connections nowadays with symphonic music. And it makes it alive and makes it something then that people of our time can appreciate it and create a relation to this art form. So I think it's very important and will continue. And again, like Jonathan, I love it. He did such a great work. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexander. It's been such a privilege to collaborate with you on this whole CD. You've done such a marvelous job interpreting my music and being open, and the symphony sounds great. And to your administration, thank you to the city. It's been just a wonderful experience.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we're very happy that you could join us for our discussion. And I hope as a composer that the music takes you on a journey, takes you somewhere, that my music is a conduit to take you into your soul, into your memory, into a feeling. Wherever you go, that's up to you. But I hope that this music, so wonderfully played by Maestro Alexander and the symphony, is able to transform and make a difference. So thank you very much for joining us.